Good evening, everyone. This is Alameda County Environmental Health Department's community meeting to discuss the former ABNI facility on San Leandro Street in Oakland. I am going to give people just a couple more minutes to join, and we'll get started promptly at 6:02. So if you'll just be patient, I'll make sure that we start right on time and also that we end on time. Unless there's significant interest, we'll stay after and answer questions. Thank you. Okay, and once again, good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Craig. I'll just be moderating tonight's meeting. This is Alameda County Environmental Health Department's community meeting to discuss the former ABNI facility. We're going to wait just till 6:02 and then we'll get started at 6:02. We are planned to end at 7:30, and if we need to stay after and ask questions, if there's significant interest, we will do that. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tracy Craig, and I'll be moderating tonight's meeting. And I'm just going to let a few more people in. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Craig. I'm moderating tonight's meeting. We're going to get going now. This meeting is being held by Alameda County Environmental Health Department. The purpose of the meeting is to provide the community with an update on the former ABNI facility, now owned by Prologis, located at 7825 San Leandro Street. We do have Spanish interpretation at the request of CB&E, so I am going to hand that slide over to John Permani, who's helping out on logistics, and he'll walk you through that if we have anybody that would prefer to listen in real time in Spanish.
Hi, everyone. To listen to a Spanish interpretation, you can go to the globe icon on your screen. You may have to click on the more or three dots if you don't see it, but it should look like a globe and show the word interpretation. When you click on that, you'll be able to select the language that you would like to hear, either English or Spanish. And then if you so choose, you can also click to mute the original audio so you only hear the language that it is being interpreted in. So if you'd like to listen in Spanish, you can just select the Spanish language and you should hear the Spanish interpretation. I'll now turn it over to our Spanish interpreters to relay that in Spanish on the main floor.
Para escuchar la traducción de la reunión en español, haga clic en el icono del mundo en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla de Zoom y luego seleccione el idioma español. Si no ve el icono del mundo, haga clic en los tres puntitos en más, luego elija interpretación y luego español. Para escuchar únicamente el español, haga clic en la opción silenciar audio original.
Thank you. Okay, moving forward. So, as I said, Alameda County Environmental Health Department is hosting this meeting to discuss the former ABNI facility, now owned by Prologis and being used by Auto Plus Towing as a tow yard for the city. You can see our agenda here. I'm not going to read it to anybody, but we do have a very meaty presentation. There's a lot of information that we'll be providing tonight. We did send a copy out before the presentation, right before the meeting. I think it went out at about 5:10. We were still working on it. So we sent it out to CBE and all the list of folks that got the invite to this meeting. Hopefully you were able to get that. If not, type your name in the Q&A box and we'll send it to you in real time right now. Once again, my name is Tracy Craig. I'm moderating the meeting. John Permani and I work together, and John is handling all of the logistics. Couple housekeeping things. This meeting is being recorded. We do have about a 35-40 minute presentation. We'll try to go through it because we really do want to hear community comments and questions. I would ask that because we have such a dense presentation, that you hold your comments or questions until the end, unless you just have a can't wait clarifying question, and then you can ask us by using the Q&A box, or you can raise your virtual hand and we'll call on you, or you can raise your real hand because we're using a Zoom meeting format and we can all see each other. Even though we can see you, we will still have to unmute you to speak, and then you'll have to press the unmute button as well. If you're on your cell phone, John, I never remember this, so help me. If you're on your cell phone and you want to comment, push.
You push *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, so if you're on a cell phone and you'd like to comment, *9 and then *6 to unmute. There you see our agenda. I think we were going to have opening remarks from Supervisor Nate Miley, and then Councilmember Houston also wanted to address his constituents, but I don't see them on yet.
Councilmember Houston did join.
Okay, and has Supervisor Miley?
I have not seen him yet. I know
Okay,
Daryl Stewart is from his office is here though.
I saw
great.
Nate just raise his hand,
Oh, great.
You
I
did.
believe.
Okay, great. Why don't we, John, can you unmute Supervisor Miley? I think he can actually unmute himself because he's a host, but
Could he raise his hand again?
I see him right here.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on. Oh, wait, I lost him. Sorry, everybody. There's a lot of folks on here and I'm tooling through. So, John, maybe you can try again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Oh,
can.
yes.
Thank you. Yeah, you
Okay.
should be able to do it yourself. Thanks. Go ahead, Supervisor Miley.
Okay, well, yes, so thank you. And good evening, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here for this meeting, and I'm confident this will be a productive meeting for all parties concerned. And because we are all interested in the well-being of the community, as well as ensuring that we can come to some type of path forward that is satisfactory and meets the needs of everyone. So I think that's about all I want to say at this point in time, being as gracious and diplomatic as possible.
Well, and I'd also like to say that Supervisor Miley's office has been very involved in the project over the last few months. So thank you. And then next, I'd like to unmute Councilmember Houston. Can you do that, John?
I think I'm already unmuted.
Oh, there we go. The guy knows how to do it.
Thank you. And that's surprising. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this meeting, similar to Supervisor Miley. I've been in office for 86 days now. Born and raised in that area, third generation Oaklander. It's been underserved for years. Underserved from years. I have some issues about all the cars from the city that's been on the streets that are dropped in District 7. I have that issue. I have a huge issue with that. Because all the cars that are in the condition was actually on the streets of Oakland, and now they're all located from District 1 to 6 in our district, and we've been underserved for so many years. So I'm just open. I want to hear the presentation. I want to hear everybody's viewpoint, because my main thing is public safety for the community that I represent, right? And growth at the same time, and growth. So I just like to stop right there.
Thank you. Okay, John, next slide. Let's get going. We have a lot of people with eyes on this project. So CBNE brought brought the tow yard use to Alameda County's attention, and Dylan Rowe has been working hard to mobilize state, county, city officials to make sure that the operations are in compliance. So I just want to quickly go through who we have here, and the folks, I'm not going to read these names, nobody has to worry about that, but the people that are bolded are the ones that are here in the meeting, and then the ones that are unbolded are people that have participated in a series of meetings we've been holding since about October 2024. We do have Supervisor Miley with us. Daryl Stewart has also been intimately involved in the day-to-day planning for this project, and then County Council. Just want to quickly call attention that Dylan Rowe will be giving most of the presentation tonight. Professional engineer, and also the Chief of Land and Water Protection for Alameda County Environmental Health. The folks underneath there are her staff. California EPA, both DTSC, Department of Toxic Substances Control, and the Water Board have lent a hand to address environmental issues. Next slide, John. Okay. And then with the City of Oakland, of course, the son of Oakland, Councilmember Houston, and then Deborah Israel is also on the line today, and then also those other folks have been involved in the meetings. And then finally, we have a host of city staff that are on tonight that are dealing with the issues as well. And finally, last project team slide, we have people that are here from Pelagus that will be presenting tonight. And then we have Auto Plus Towing. And so Sean Rollins actually is the owner, but Maria Morales is the one that handles the day-to-day operations. And so she'll be presenting tonight as well. So just want to recap, we've got over 30 people that are working on the ABNI site. So you get to really see kind of how the sausage is made in government tonight and how decisions are made. We do not have all the answers, I want to say that, but we are working hard to try to solve the issue and issues out there. And we really look forward to community input and thoughts, and particularly how to continue to engage you in a way that's easy for all of you. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Dylan to get you through the majority of the presentation. Thank you. Dylan?
Good evening, everybody. And Tracy, thanks for that introduction. I'm just going to bounce right off of what she said. A lot of people have been involved in this. I want to thank CB&E for bringing this to my attention in October. And I hope that this presentation shows that I heard you. A lot of people heard you. And we're working on getting some stuff done here. And I think it's what we've been talking about for a long time with you guys and environmental justice communities are there voices that get heard? And I think this is an example of communities stepping up and asking for action to be taken. And so I'm going to go through this presentation. Everything is not resolved, but a lot of action has been taken. And so I continue to look forward to working with CB&E as a partner in all of this as we look at our environmental justice communities in Alameda County. So I'm just going to really briefly go over kind of history. This site was the American Brass and Iron Foundry at the site for about 100 years. It ceased operations in 2023. Right before it ceased operations, Prologis bought the property from ABNI, and they assumed responsibility for part of the facility closure and conducting site investigations and cleanup after in order to get facility closure of the ABNI. So ABNI left and took their hazardous materials and equipment with them. And then between June and December of 2023, Prologis demolished the above ground features, demolition of hardscape and subsurface infrastructure, and remediating contaminated soil, groundwater, soil vapor, and stormwater prior to site redevelopment with the proposed distribution warehouse that Prologis is proposing to redevelop the site with. That is still in the future. We'll talk about that more as we go forward. And as we talk about this, a lot of this ties to compliance with the 2011 deed restriction that was put on the property associated with an environmental cleanup case that requires the property owner and all subsequent owners to preserve the cap integrity. The cap is the hardscape, and groundwater monitoring wells and prohibitions of unauthorized releases of hazardous materials to the subsurface. So that's an important piece because this is where things went south. So as we talk about this, I want to talk about how we're going to get back into compliance with the deed restriction as we go forward. So in 2024, after the vertical structures at AB&I were demolished, Prologis conducted a pretty extensive initial subsurface investigation. This was before Auto Plus Towing came to the site. Next slide. And not too far after that, in July 2024, Prologis it's our understanding that Prologis executed a lease with Auto Plus Towing for receiving and storing vehicles on behalf of the Oakland Police Department without notifying Alameda County and the City of Oakland of the change in land use, which was required in that deed restriction. In September 2024, that's is our understanding that Auto Plus Towing began tow yard operations at the site, and it wasn't until October 2024 that CB&EU notified Alameda County of the tow yard operations. And since that time, there have been a lot of site visits, a lot of meetings with stakeholders in this, including all those people that Tracy showed in that slide. To determine a path forward. And the path forward is to resolve notices of violation. And we're going to talk about all of this as we move forward, but this is just an introduction. Obtain permits for land use from the City of Oakland and permits for hazardous materials facilities from Alameda County's CUPA to allow continued tow yard operations. It's not clear to me how long they're intended to be there, but these are pending City of Oakland and Alameda County approvals. And then also, we've been working on evaluating releases of the hazardous chemicals to soil, vapor, groundwater, and stormwater, and working with Prologis to implement a bunch of actions at the site to stabilize the site, to protect human health and the environment, and allow for these while this property is being used as a tow yard. So next slide, please. So the next slides, I'm going to just run through their pictures, and pictures tell a million words. And so this just gives a really good visual of what has progressed in the last couple of years. This is a picture in May 2023 before the demolition of the AB&I facility. It was right before they vacated, or around the time AB&I vacated. You can see that the site was covered with buildings and asphalt areas. It also had infrastructure, including stormwater treatment systems and sanitary sewer wastewater treatment systems on site. Next slide. So this is a picture not too long after the demolition of the vertical structures was completed. You can see a lot of things that I'll talk more about as we go along here, but there are a lot of pits and subsurface concrete vaults that were discovered during the demolition. Next slide, please.
Dylan, I just have a quick clarifying question in the chat, in the quick question and answer box. Isn't it true that Prologis is acting out of compliance at this very moment by operating Auto Plus Towing Yard out of compliance by doing remediation at the same time?
There is no remediation happening at this time. There is site stabilization, and I think there are a lot of compliance issues here about permitting and about the deed restrictions. So they are out of compliance with the deed restriction, and they don't have a land use permit with the City of Oakland right now. They do, Auto Plus Towing does have a facility permit, but those are things we'll talk about as we continue on.
Right. And I would just add that I think the 30 some odd people that are working on this are working very hard to get them into compliance. Okay, keep going.
All right, next slide. So this doesn't show you much. It's a little bit grayed out, but it is a photo that was taken. These are all from Google or imagery. But this was the site right before Auto Tow Yard began operating. Again, you can't see very much on this, so it's not a great slide. But this was taken in July 2024. The next slide, please. This is in September 2024, still before Alameda County had been notified by CB&E of the operations. And you can see on this slide the area that has been portrayed with a dash line that is the lease area for Auto Plus towing use at the site. And so you can see cars operating on the site and within that area. Next slide, please. This is a slide that was taken in January 2025 that shows the expansion of the Auto Plus towing outside of the lease area. I'm going to talk about more of that, and you'll see some of the areas where they are that are of concern to us. So quite a bit of an expansion of an operation. You can also see in this slide Elmhurst Creek right down in the bottom corner of this page, and one of the concerns we have is about stormwater discharge to Elmhurst Creek. Next slide, please. And then this starts to show, after working with Auto Plus Towing and working with the City of Oakland and Prologis, the tow yard at least moving back into the leased areas. You can see on this slide there are still cars outside of the leased areas. We requested fencing be put up to delineate the leased area to help Auto Plus Towing understand the limits of their lease. And that was done last week, according to documentation that I have received. Next slide, please. Actually, we go back to that slide really quickly, John, sorry. There's two other things I want to show on this slide. There are two hatched areas that are dirt, exposed dirt areas. And some of those areas are known to have contamination in them from historic AB&I foundry operations. And one of our concerns has been the use of the site and not having those stabilized, and also the use of parking cars on dirt areas. You can also see a water supply well. I'm going to talk more about that. This is an industrial water supply well that was used by AB&I for processed water. And then you can also see some infrastructure that are environmental monitoring infrastructure. There's some groundwater monitoring wells around the perimeter of the site. There are black and white circles, and then soil vapor monitoring probes. That infrastructure was installed prior to APT coming to the site during the investigation that Environmental Health was overseeing to evaluate the impacts from the former AB&I facility. So next slide, please.
Right, and I just want to note, I do see questions in the Q&A box, and I'm going to hold those as our first questions when we get to the question and answer. I just want to say it has been established they are operating out of compliance. And Dylan, there's some concerns. Why are they operating out of compliance? Why is that allowed? We'll answer that, I think, throughout the presentation, and then we'll give you a more detailed answer at the end when we can actually have discourse.
And I'm going to provide some clarification there. Alameda County Department of Environmental Health has authority over my department, over the investigation of contamination to soil, groundwater, soil vapor, and stormwater. The CUPA has authority over permitting hazardous waste facilities, not land use. So there is land use, and so there are some issues here, and I want to make clear that agencies are working to resolve those, and you will hear more about that as we go forward. So next slide, please. So the kinds of chemicals that we are concerned of that are over and above the chemicals that were released or used during the AB&I foundry operations are things that come from leaking and damaged vehicles. And I'm going to show you some pictures that makes more sense of this. It's a long laundry list. It's just about everything under the sun. Polyaromatic hydrocarbons, something called PFAS. Those are the forever chemicals. They are found in firefighting foams. They are found in flame retardants that used in vehicles. Metals from cars, volatile organic compounds coming from gasoline and other solvents from cars, petroleum, polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, asbestos from things like brakes, and then another category of flame retardants. So next slide, and this will make sense as I show you some pictures here. So these chemicals are being released, or we believe are being released. We know there are releases. Exactly what's in all of them, we are not sure at this time, and we are asking for investigation to figure this out. But you can see the condition of these cars, burned out, completely burned out. They're filled with ash and firefighting foam and everything you can imagine. Leaks of chemicals to the surface. You can see gasoline or some solvent leak there. You can see up in the top hand corner areas where there has been some absorbent placed on the ground to on leaks that occurred. Next slide, please. And this comes to some of the questions that have just been asked. When we talk about violations of permitted uses at the site, the deed restriction has specific prohibitions about what can be done without notification and approval by environmental health, including any kind of trenching or subsurface work. There was a significant amount of trenching that was done by Prologis to install new utilities without ACDH approval to get the site prepared for APT use. There's degraded asphalt. The hardscape at the site is not in good shape at all. There are areas where the cap does not cover the entire site, and I did show you some of those areas of exposed soil where cars have been on, or where stormwater certainly has drained over to that has been in contact with some pollutants. And there's parking of cars over degraded asphalt and dirt areas across not only the lease area, but the area outside of the lease area. Next slide, please.
And then Dylan, I just wanted to note that somebody asked in the Q&A, and it's a good question, so I want you to keep this in mind, and it's, is it even possible to do remediation or stabilization while actively adding more toxic waste to the site? I think that's one of the problems you're struggling with. So just keep that in mind, and we can answer that live throughout your presentation if you would.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I appreciate those comments. Stephen, if it's coming from you or anybody in the community, they're good comments. You ask hard comments, and there are going to be some hard questions here. And no, you can't remediate and have active releases. You can stabilize and you can try to stop the active releases, but it makes no sense to remediate. We can't even finish site investigation and an evaluation of the impacts to all of these to the site from historical and current until the site operations that are releasing chemicals of concern have stopped. So we'll talk more about that later. This photo shows some of the trenching, shows areas where parked cars were located on the unpaved areas, workers in unpaved areas that do have known contamination in it. Cars parked, hurts, all kinds of stuff, severely damaged cars in dirt areas. And this was the condition we found when we first came to the site after CB&E identified the use. Next slide, please. So part of the AB&I facility, because it was a big facility, it had stormwater infrastructure, and the blue squares on this figure, and I know this figure has a lot, but the blue squares on the figure are stormwater inlets. At the time that the facility was demolished, they were connected, those stormwater inlets are connected through a series of pipes that were routed over to a stormwater treatment facility that is located on the edge of the property. Down at the bottom of the page, where they went through a series of treatment before they discharged to Elmhurst Creek. As I mentioned earlier, the stormwater treatment system was demolished and removed from the site during the vertical demolition. And so we have a lot of concerns, and you'll see more about that, about stormwater migration, contact with pollutants, and where is it going and how will it get controlled. This photo shows some of these. The actual photo on the top is an area where the former stormwater treatment units were. So you've got pits with pretty polluted water, not sure what's in it. And you can see stormwater just ponding in different areas on this site. So next slide, please.
Yeah, there's another question here that I think, and I just want to reiterate to people that are putting questions in the question and answer box. I'm taking these down and we will call on you after the meeting, but I would like to get through the presentation. But there is a question that keeps repeating itself, and it says, why are so many people trying to help them continue to operate a toxic site? So
Okay.
we're going to be answering that. Go ahead.
Well, I will let all the agencies speak for themselves. I will let Prologis speak for themselves. I will let the City of Oakland, Oakland Police Department. I can tell you that environmental health is spending a huge amount of effort in bringing and trying to stabilize and drain liquids from this site, get them containerized, get them characterized, and working with the other agencies to bring this site into compliance. It is a big concern to us. The stormwater management that you see here, the site topography after the site was demolished, it does not promote drainage to those stormwater inlets. Polluted stormwater collects in depressions and pits, in low spots. No active stormwater treatment or control is currently at the site. The impacts of the stormwater or discharge locations are unknown at this time. We have asked and are waiting for some documentation that will help us understand what's going on at this site. You can see these two photographs that were taken on March 31st, so a few days ago. They show some stabilization measures that have been installed around some of these pits, but they have not prevented discharges from these pits to continue to move over outside of it. And it's not clear to me. I have just received this data, but it looks like sludge to me from the stormwater pits that has spilled over onto the pavement outside. I'm not sure, but again, these are big concerns to us. Next slide, please. Another concern. When the Prologis took over the demolition of the facility or the responsibilities for that, they also took over the responsibility for maintaining and then destroying the industrial water supply well at the site. We have asked them to go out and identify that site, that well, because it was still just remaining an open question mark where it was and what condition it was in. A few weeks ago, maybe several weeks ago, we got documentation that showed that they had located the well, and it's basically an open hole, and it had a piece of plywood over it, a lot of debris around it, and when they when they evaluated the well, initial evaluation, they found more than a foot of free product floating on the water of some kind of petroleum product. They had debris obstruction in the well at 17 feet. And this well extends to 500 feet. This is a water supply well that pulled water from deep. And so we are concerned about contaminants that may have migrated into this well. And we are requesting further evaluation of this well and the potential impacts from that. Next slide, please. These are monitoring wells. I talked about these a little bit earlier. The monitoring wells and the probes. We have been concerned from the time that we found out about the use of Auto Plus towing at the site about the condition of these monitoring points. So next slide, please. There have been, Prologis has installed some measures to protect those wells, but you can see that again, there are things that are happening, but they are not resolving all the issues here. And so we've got on the left-hand slide, you can see releases from cars, drips and drabs, stained concrete around that probe. And on the right, even though there's bollards around it, you can see stormwater ponded all around this. I don't know if it's a well or a probe. It's probably a probe that is in contact directly with contamination that is coming from these cars. Next slide. So These are compliance actions that have been completed to date. They are not, we're not there, but we're making some progress. There has been fencing installed around the former industrial pits, fencing around the unpaved areas where there were that were being used for car storage. Fencing, as I said, around the lease area to keep the Auto Plus Towing within their lease area. Prologis has installed filter fabric just recently to cover the areas of soil, the 2 areas of soil that have been unpaved since demolition and that both had access to cars parking over them and also have known contamination in them. They have placed and maintained straw wattles around the site perimeter and unpaved areas and the former industrial pits. Again, these measures are there. They're not absolutely effective because stormwater continues to collect and pond and spill out of these things. They've installed sediment filter fabric, rock barrier bags, straw wattles around the stormwater drop inlets. They've installed bollards around each of the soil, vapor well and groundwater monitoring wells. Again, there are some problems with that because we still see ponding, and there has been some incidents, at least one, where one of those bollards has already been knocked over by getting bumped by a car. Let's see. They have removed the free product from the well and sampled water above the debris blockage at 17 feet. We have gotten results of the free product, and the laboratory and the consultants are stating that it is likely a result of motor oil release from the pumps. It's not clear exactly, but it does appear to be something of that nature. And they will be doing some additional actions to sample that well water, remove the obstruction, sample deeper in the well water, and do some deeper groundwater sampling in the vicinity of this industrial water supply well. They have installed a cap on the well and fencing around the well. They have installed fencing around the waste storage area where the water that was removed from the well is stored on site until it is characterized. And they have submitted some work plans for destruction of the well, hardscape restoration. Neither of those work plans have been approved by environmental health. The hardscape restoration is really just a very basic bullet list of what they are going to do. We have asked for detailed plans and specs to figure out what's going to be done about this hardscape restoration, regardless of the use of this site. Next
And
slide.
Dylan,
Yep.
there's a clarifying question. What is free product?
Oh, sorry. Free product is
Sure.
it's basically it's like gasoline, or it could be a solvent. It's not mixed with water. It is a chemical that is not mixed with water. It's lighter than water, so it floats on water, but it dissolves and makes its way into water.
Okay. And just I want to make sure people know, we see your comments and questions, and I'm going to give all of you an opportunity to talk, where I'd really like to just get through the presentation because some of the answers will be there, particularly about why why this continues to be allowed to be used and set. So I think we're probably halfway through the presentation right now. And
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so you go to the next slide. These are some of the photos that document some of the compliance actions. Again, there are some compliance actions that still are not doing what they need to do. And we're continuing to work with Prologis to get plans to correct these issues. Next slide, please. Again, this is showing the well that now has a cap on it. It also has protection around it. It has been fenced, and in the top left-hand corner, there are the four 55-gallon drums that contain the water that was removed from the well for sampling prior to offsite disposal. We have asked for the well water and all of the sump water or all the water in the pits to be sampled and removed. Sample for everything, sample for all of those contaminants that I showed you earlier in the slide. Next item, slide. This shows the geotextile fabric that was placed just recently, I think last week, on the dirt areas. So that is progress. Next slide. So I've been talking a lot. You have good questions and I will keep answering your questions, but I'm gonna turn this over to Prologis because I kind of, at this point in time, I think it's important for other stakeholders involved in this project to talk and talk about what they're doing. And so we're gonna listen, we're gonna have both Prologis, City of Oakland Police Department, Auto Plus Towing, and City of Oakland Planning Department present some slides going forward.
And before we do that, I just have one question in here that is pertinent, and that is, can Prologis still be in compliance and have Auto Plus towing on the site during the remediation process? So remediation process means the cleanup process. So can they, I'll read it again, can Prologis still be in compliance and have Auto Plus towing on the site during the cleanup process?
Their deed restriction does not allow them to have unauthorized releases. That doesn't mean you can't have a tow yard if you don't have unauthorized releases. They could use it as an interim use for any manner of things if it's allowed by the City of Oakland's land use permitting. But no, actually, they are still in violation because there are still releases occurring. We are trying to stabilize those releases. This has been a lot of work to get this moving. But no, you cannot remediate. You can mitigate. You can remove some things to mitigate additional impact. So, for instance, having the requirement to drain those pits all over the site that, quite frankly, I don't know what's in them, and I will be interested to find out what's in them, and then to have measures, engineering controls to not allow continued collection of stormwater that is in contact with contaminants that are on the ground. Those are mitigation measures while we try to stabilize and stop the releases. But it is a good question, and there still are releases occurring on this site.
Right. I would just say that if you have questions, you can put them in the question and answer box, and I'll call on you in the order that you put them in. You can also just write them down and raise your hand at the Q&A time, and I'm happy to call on you then. I just don't want people to think we're ignoring the questions in the box. I'm looking at them and reading them, and we'll make sure that you get an opportunity to ask them in person.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Blair with Prologis. And Blair, you're going to take the next few slides, I believe, correct?
I will. Thank you, Dylan, and thank you everyone for attending tonight. So I'm going to move on to some of the in progress. A lot of items Dylan's been talking about, specifically plans for removing liquid from these pits and depressions. So there's a work plan in development for that work. The industrial supply well, as Dylan's already covered, we removed the free product and the characterization that's been completed. The water well characterization is in progress. And then we'll be submitting a technical work plan to the county to evaluate the impacts there for the deeper groundwater as well as well destruction. In addition, we'll have a plan to conduct quarterly groundwater and soil vapor monitoring during operations. And as well, we have future characterization work planned, after Auto Plus vacates the site. Next slide, please. So moving into hardscape restoration and maintenance work plans, those are in progress. Integrity assessment by our civil engineer, which will tie into a hardscape restoration and maintenance work plan to support cap integrity, as Dylan has discussed earlier. Stormwater and drainage modifications, we're working with our environmental consultant, Terraphase. There'll be a work plan being submitted to the county documenting not only investigations completed to date on stormwater and drainage infrastructure, but plans moving forward to manage stormwater on the site. And then updates to to soil and groundwater management plans in the future. Next slide, please.
Blair, just a quick question about stormwater.
Mhm.
A clarifying question. Has a SWPPP, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, been prepared for the current site?
So there was a SWIPI in place for ABNI under the industrial general permit. The Auto Plus, the tow yard use does not fall under the same industrial general permit, but we are proceeding with implementing stormwater measures that would follow a SWIPI under that permit assumption, if that answers that question. So.
Okay.
And
And-
I'd like to just add in there that you know, that's a question that is still remains to see. We have not seen the SWIP, but I do think that there, and I wrote it in my letter, that there are examples of SWIPs that are used for auto storage pick and pulls. This is kind of like a pick and pull, although a pick and pull has hazardous materials drained. This property does not. So I think I think that there. That this is an important piece. An appropriate stormwater prevention pollution plan needs to be developed and the stormwater system modified to prevent discharges from this site.
Thanks, Dylan, for that. And then, so I want to move into a schedule for compliance and deliverables. So this is following in line with a directive letter from Alameda County for action items and compliance dates and status. So we've talked about the water supply well and the completed site and stormwater mitigation work, of which Dylan covered earlier in the presentation, which is full of lots of photos and progress to date. As you'll see at the end of the week, we have planned to submit the industrial water supply well investigation work plan along with the work plan for analysis and offsite disposal for the liquid and depressions and pits. And then moving on down the line through April, May, and June, work plans for hardscape restoration and for stormwater drainage modifications, the groundwater and soil vapor monitoring work plan, a revised site management plan, an updated conceptual site model, and then an amendment to the Koopa facility closure plan that is currently in place. So those are our compliance dates and our current status right now that we are working on. And then I think the next slide here, Dylan, is getting back into the Koopa item, and I think that is going to be you, Emily.
Yeah, I'll grab this one, and then I'm gonna. So I'm just gonna kind of be a transition here. Thank you, Blair, for presenting there. So we're gonna shift now to the Koopa compliance, which is permitting of hazardous materials facilities at the site. And in January of 2025, Environmental Health Koopa issued a notice of violation to Auto Plus Towing after issuing an inspection and a notice to comply that was not responded to. And since that time, Auto Plus Towing and Maria Morales, who you will hear from in just a moment, has worked hard with Koopa to get the facility permitted with a Koopa facility permit. And so that's not a land use permit, but that's a facility permit. And to work with identifying and doing the things that were noted in the notice of violation. So that between that and these are kind of land use and permit compliance, and APT, Prologis and the city are working on resolving land use permits. And so I'm going to turn this over, I think Kiona Settle with Oakland Police Department's going to kick it off, and then hand it over to Maria Morales with APT.
So good evening, everyone. I am Deputy Director Kiana Settle with the Oakland Police Department, and I have worked in various capacities with the towing services contract for the last several years. APT, Auto Plus Towing, they do work closely with the Oakland Police Department to provide an essential service to the city of Oakland and the police department. APT, they do support law enforcement and public safety operations by towing vehicles for various reasons, including removing abandoned or inoperable vehicles from the public streets, transporting city-owned vehicles in need of repair, relocating vehicles that pose traffic or safety hazards. They tow vehicles related to arrests, and they also tow vehicles that are part of criminal investigations. So they do provide a wide range of towing services for the city of Oakland and the Oakland Police Department. Over the years, APT has worked closely with OPD to try to ease the burden of retrieving towed vehicles for Oakland residents. As part of this effort, APT has agreed to waive towing fees and the first 48 hours of storage for Oakland residents who are the victims of certain crimes. And so the Oakland Police Department is committed to working with Auto Plus, Alameda County, Prologis, and the appropriate City of Oakland agency to resolve issues related to the towing operations because this is an essential service for the City of Oakland and the police department. And I, as well as our current towing services project manager, Nikita Williams-Pierre, we will be available to answer any questions that you have about the tow contract after this presentation. So thank you.
Great. I think now it's going to go to Maria Morales, who is running the day-to-day operations for, oh, no, I'm wrong. Maria? Is Maria available?
Well, here I am.
There
Sorry
you are.
about that.
There you go. This is
Thank you.
yours.
So I just want to thank everyone for attending this evening's meeting. And just to let everyone know who's participating that Auto Plus Towing takes this matter very seriously. Once it was brought to our attention, we immediately jumped into gear and started getting ourselves into compliance. I will say some of the things we were not aware of and we were made aware, and we learned a lot through the process. We obtained our Cooper permit in February. We put our staff through a hazardous waste training. We are doing everything that is necessary to be in compliance, as this is very important to us. We do, like Kiana Soto said, we provide a critical service for the city of Oakland. We have also, if you go to the next slide, you will see some photos there. We continuously clean this site, as you can see, and also on the top right corner, you will see that our staff there went through the hazardous waste training. And the next slide is, we had a site visit with Dylan and Nikita and Emily and one other person. These are two of our
I think
other
it was
facilities.
Supervisor Miley's office was there as
Yes,
well.
thank you,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah.
So you will see here that these two other facilities, which was, like I said, we're learning through the process, and we appreciate Dylan, for giving us some information that we weren't aware of. You can see that we do have other sites that are more suitable for the vehicles that are in disrepair. We have the warehouse, the covered parking, and so forth. So as we were made aware that these sites would be more suitable, we began towing the vehicles that are in disrepair to these facilities and not the 7825 San Leandro Street location. We are also in the process of moving the vehicles that are in disrepair from the 7825 locations to these other sites that are more suitable. So you can see here that our Coupa for the two other locations that we have been submitted. And our relocation for the remaining vehicles that are on the 7825 San Leandro Street location, we will have done on or before July the 1st. And I would like to add that once we were made aware in February that the burn vehicles should not be on the site, they were moved off of that site. So there are currently no burn vehicles on that site.
Thank you. So just to clarify, the Coupa is the permit that would allow them to have these cars at other locations that are covered and more suitable. And then the plan is to remove the cars by early July, if possible. And I'm going to move
Correct.
us along because we're at 6:55. So I'd like to wrap this up in the next 3 minutes so that we can actually hear from people because we have a considerable amount of questions. So I think our next slide is just on land use, city land use. John, if you'd move it forward. And we have Pete Bullman from the city that will quickly address this.
Hello,
Pete, can
Pete
you?
Volman.
Thank you.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, Pete Volman from City of Oakland, Bureau of Planning. I'll keep this quick. My involvement on the site has been that I'm the case planner on the Prologis proposal to redevelop the project site. In January of this year, Dylan Rowe had informed me that this activity was operating on the site and that there had been ongoing concerns. I did a record search and saw that there was an enforcement case opened. I believe it was in October. After that, they had come in and got actually a zoning clearance from the counter operations staff. I know from the site that that was an issue because while the zoning permits the use, there are limitations that it cannot be within 600 feet of a residential zone or within a half a mile of BART. The site is within a half a mile of BART, even though it's more than 600 feet. So it does require a major conditional use permit. So I informed the manager of the operations group at the counter to rescind the zoning clearance, which was done shortly thereafter of our discovery of this. So currently they are operating without a land use permit. So they will need to come in for a major conditional use permit to continue the operations. There are some other potential options, but it will be, it's something that the city's looking at and exploring.
Yeah, thanks for that, Pete. And I can quickly run through the long-term action items on the site redevelopment. So Prologis is applicant. We're working with City of Oakland on our planning application and going through the CEQA and planning entitlement process for the future redevelopment of the site for a warehouse distribution center. There will be a public comment process as part of that CEQA documentation. There will be additional site investigations tied to the historical releases, as well as site investigations to evaluate the potential impacts once the tow yard vacates. We will work with all of the agencies, Alameda County, City of Oakland, as we work through corrective action plans, hardscape demolition, and cleanup activities with the redevelopment through that planning and permitting process, ultimately redeveloping the site, resulting in a new deed restriction and a updated site management plan. Next slide, please. And just to highlight some of the schedule milestones, these are subject to the Auto Plus lease with Prologis, but we would progress through drafting of the EIR. It would be published, made out for public comment. We would go to Planning Commission for the development permit and the conditional use permit. We would continue with site investigations for historical and potential impacts, drafting of a corrective action plan with public comment period. And once we got through that process of the entitlements and site characterization, drafting of the action plan, we could move into redevelopment of the site, including hardscape demolition, grading, utility relocations, corrective action implementation as part of those activities, which would result in the final phase of the facility closure for Coupa, allowing us to proceed with vertical building construction, site work, the final site management plan, and the land use covenant. This is the first meeting, well, actually, we've had one community meeting last year, but this is one of more meetings to come as we, continue to communicate and have interagency coordination. And
Okay, thank you, Blair.
thank you for your time.
Thanks, Blair. All right, that brings us to the end of our presentation. I just want to call attention. There's my name and number. You can call me anytime, 24/7. It's my cell phone. If you have questions, if you'd like us to brief you, if there was something you didn't understand, if you'd like to meet with us, I'm happy to pull that together. And I mean it when I say you can call me early mornings or evenings. Maria, I do see you have your hand up, but I really do want to get to these questions. So is it super important, or can we move on to questions and answers? Okay, I'm going to move on. So I'd like to know, how do we want to handle this? I know that we have people, I can read the questions, but I would prefer to call on you. So I'm going to call on you in the order that I see the questions in the box. So first would be Gabrielle, then Mr. Charles, 3 L's, then Jason Ross, then Angela. I have an anonymous participant. I will read that question. Then Ruby Acevedo, and then Adele Watts, Deal Mims, and Alex Brown. Before we do that, though, I would like to ask CBE if they would just like to take a couple minutes, because I know you were critical to this and you've been very involved in ABNI. So I just wanted to give you a couple moments to address your constituents if you'd like. So Adele, I'm looking at you because I know that we email back and forth, and wondering if you would like to address people.
Yeah, sure. Can you all hear
Thank
me?
you.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in the meeting. I guess what I would ground us in that, like, as many folks on this call know, but just to like ground us in CBE's, work on this, just campaign around this site, right? We've been organizing around this site since dating back to 2007, when ABNI was operating and harming the health of East Oakland residents for generations, right? I think we saw some of the potential contamination at the site as a result of the use of the site as the foundry. And so, yeah, this redevelopment has been something that CBE, as well as our members, have been engaged in for many years. And so I want to name that. I think the other piece around the use of the tow yard that we're seeing right now, honestly, we were shocked when we noticed that Prologis was using this site as a tow yard, given the historical harm at the site. We have met with Prologis, Tracy, Dylan, and folks from, I think it was Rue Environmental at the time, have come to our environmental justice working group meetings. And, we've had that open dialogue. Our members have been able to give feedback throughout the process on, everything from the community engagement plan to the air monitoring plan. And, it's really important to us that, like, this site does not continue to be a source of harm for East Oakland. We want to make sure that whatever happens at this site, that it benefits East Oakland's current residents and does not further harm our community. And so I'll save some of the other comments that I have for questions, because, like the question period, because I do have some questions, but just grounding us in, it's CBE, but CBE along with our membership base, and our membership base is the East Oakland community and East Oakland residents that are concerned about the harm to their health as a result of the use of this site, right? So hearing a lot of conversation around how to bring folks into compliance when we know that there's violations, that they're actively operating without permits. When is enough enough? When do we shut this site site down so that it's no longer causing harm to our community, right? There's a lot of talk about coming into compliance, but I'm not hearing anything about shutting this site down. And that's honestly what I'd like to hear. What's the plan to stop using this as a tow yard, knowing that they're out of compliance and they have been for months? It just seems unacceptable to me and unacceptable for East Oakland residents. So I'll pause there and we can go into questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Adele. And also I would encourage you to put information in the chat. I'm sure everybody knows you, but just in case there's one person that doesn't, if you would do that, I would be appreciative of that effort. Okay, I'm going to name you off again in order, and then remember your name. I do want to say it's 7:05. We're willing to stay till 8 if people want us to answer questions, but just be cognizant lots of people want to talk. So please be succinct in your comments. So I have right now, and remember your numbers, but I'll let you know too, Gabrielle, then Mr. Charles, 3 L's, Angela, Jason Ross, Ruby, Acevedo, Dell Mims, Adele Watts, and then Alex Brown. And then I also have some, and then I see Maria Munoz, thank you. And then I would also say that I've got a couple anonymous comments that I'll read afterward in the box. So Gabrielle, could you please unmute yourself? Or John, could you unmute Gabrielle? And then she'll have to push the blue button.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Thank you. So hi, so I'm an East Oakland resident for the last 10 years. I'm also a CBE member because I'm concerned about the environmental, like the way that the Bay Area treats East Oakland, like kind of their toxic waste dump. And, you know, my initial question was about sort of compliance, but I'm going to be honest, my impression that how this presentation has come across to be tonight is, yeah, it's wrong. Yeah, it's out of compliance. Yeah, it's illegal. Yeah, they shouldn't be doing it, but we're just going to let them do it anyway. We're going to find a way to help them do it. We're going to change the deed restrictions. We're going to do whatever we need to do to make sure that what they're still doing now, they can do legally. And that's very upsetting to me. Just as somebody who lives here, who has health impacts from pollution. And I guess I guess my question is, why aren't we talking about shutting them down? I understand being able to tow cars. I mean, if you ask anybody who's ever had their car stolen in Oakland, I don't think they would call what Auto Plus Towing does an essential service, quite the opposite. And it's great that they're like, oh, we're gonna, you know, if somebody tells you that your car's here within 48 hours, you can get it back without paying hundreds of dollars. Great. But like, if the cars from all over Oakland are coming here, like, why are we keeping them here? Why is every single one of Auto Plus Towing's yards in East Oakland? Why aren't we putting a tow yard in Rock Ridge if that's where all the cars are coming from? If this is so essential, why does it have to be here? When this area has been for generations burdened repeatedly, and it just adds up and it adds up and it adds up. And yeah, why is our conversation limited to how we're going to bring this really kind of honestly horrific, like the pictures are way worse than I thought. It's worse than I thought. The well, that's unbelievable. Like, we're looking at this, we're like, yeah, this is horrific. Look at this horrific situation. And we're gonna find a way to make it so that this horrific situation is legal.
Okay.
You know,
So question is, why are we not having a conversation about shutting this down?
yes.
And if this is so essential, why is this in East Oakland?
Yes. And also why, like, the original question was like, why are they still operating? For like, just the immediate question is, why are they still operating? What is stopping them from why aren't we just like, you can't do this? Like,
Okay, I'm gonna let people answer so we can go on, Gabrielle, and I don't want to cut you off, but yet I'm cutting you off, so I apologize for that. Who on the team? Dylan, I'm just going to turn to you to help me here.
Yeah, I'm going to start. Gabrielle, your questions are valid. And I have had the same questions from the day that you have notified me. And I have brought all of these concerns, what I can do. So I have my jurisdiction is limited to what I can do. And my jurisdiction is to stop this, right? To stop the releases and to mitigate it. And it's been slow and it hasn't happened yet. There have been some things that have happened that have improved it, but it has not as I talk. So I hope it didn't sound like whitewashing on my presentation, because I'm not whitewashing this. I have been very vocal about this and have brought together a lot of players to answer these questions that and be accountable to East Oakland. So I take your complaints and your concerns very seriously. I always have with CB&E. I brought this group together and asked them to come here because I want people to answer these questions, not just me. So I'm going to pass it off to other people that and I told you these questions would come. Why is this site operating without a permit? Why is it operating without a permit? A bigger issue is why do we use East Oakland for dumping grounds? That's a bigger issue than this right now, but it is a part of this conversation.
And so, Dylan, this is Deputy Director Kiana Settle with the Oakland Police Department. I can provide a response to part of Gabrielle's questions. And as you said, she raises some very valid questions. And I want to make sure that everyone in this meeting realizes that no police department can be without a towing service. And the service that APT provides to the City of Oakland and the Oakland Police Department, it's not just isolated to towing abandoned vehicles or towing recovered vehicles that have been stolen. They provide much, much more. You know, by law, we cannot leave a vehicle on the city streets once it has been recovered, which is why we give the registered owner a certain amount of time to pick up the vehicle. When someone is arrested and we have to tow the vehicle, we can't just always leave it on city streets or allow them to call someone else to pick up the vehicle. When a vehicle has been part of a crime, whether it's the suspect vehicle or the victim's vehicle, the police department can't just leave the vehicle sitting on the city streets. It has to be towed. So we do understand your frustrations, and I have worked with APT to see if they could relocate the vehicle to other areas of the city. And I know that they have looked into leasing or purchasing lots in other areas of the city. But quite honestly, based on the volume of vehicles that are towed by the police department, unfortunately, the sites where the vehicles can be stored are located in East Oakland. And so the police department will continue to work with Auto Plus Towing to see if they can relocate those vehicles to other areas inside or outside of the city of Oakland with the proper permits, because that is the utmost importance to the Oakland Police Department. But again, it is very difficult, if not impossible, for any police department to not have someone that tows vehicles, because it is an essential service that the police department and the city does provide.
Okay. I am going to go to Mr. Charles 3Ls. And if he would unmute himself. Mr. Charles? Okay, well, maybe I'll just read his question then. He says, what are the beneficial community investment penalties for being out of compliance?
Tracy, will you reread that?
Yes, I will. What are the beneficial community investment penalties for being out of compliance? John, I think we can see your screen.
Tracy, can I step in real quick?
You may.
Okay. Turn on my screen. Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name's Emily Ho. I'm one of the managers.
Oh, Emily, are you answering the question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I am. I just want.
Okay, so wait, Mr. Charles is on. He just unmuted, so let's let him do that first. Of course, thank you so much.
No,
Hi.
I appreciate this, and I just wanted to say that the way you guys function with making them come into compliance, it just make me think of why we lost all of our sports teams. It's like nobody can work together to get the damn job done. And one of the issues I have, I support them on why are they still able to operate out of compliance when they are still harming the health of the people that's around them. And so my thing is, do they have cumulative penalties focused on the communities impacted? Knowing that mosquitoes carry malaria, Are the impacts of the standing water being quantified? Can you share a breakdown of the related illnesses related to the fire suppressants? Do they have an Oakland First policy for contractors and employers? Do they have a community benefits fund? What community-based stakeholders are they working with to ensure that the community's interests are being recognized? And do they have a record? Oh, and how can community members access their services for abandoned and burned out vehicles since they are so happy to remove them off the streets?
Okay, that was a lot of questions, and I'm going to encourage you to email those to us as well. I'm going to get a transcript of this and make sure that all the questions that we answer them and we post them. Because I think a few of those are just out of the purview of tonight. So I just don't think we're able to answer them all. But I do want them answered. So I think the one question that this first question was, are there penalties that are paid to the community because they're out of compliance? So does the community get some kind of benefit because they're out of compliance? Did I say that right, Mr. Charles?
Yeah, that's part of it. And please answer the one about the abandoned vehicles so we can start calling them to get them off the streets.
Okay, so I don't think that there are any community penalties right now. I don't think the government is set up that way. So I want to say that. And then Maria, can you answer the question about abandoned vehicles?
Yes, so if you want an abandoned vehicle removed from the street, you would definitely have to contact the Oakland Police Department, as we are contracted with them. We don't have the authority to just, tow a vehicle based on a phone call. We have to have the authorization from the police department or the Department of Transportation.
Okay. All right. Next, Angela. Angela, do you want me to read your question or do you want to ask it?
No, because I feel like I had a couple of questions up there, but I feel like you answered two of them. I had,
You have the one here that says, how can we get accurate information about soil's historical contaminants as well as remediation when the site is operating as a tow yard?
yes, if somebody could answer that question, that'd be
I think
great.
it's how can you clean up the site when it's an active tow yard, right? That's sort of it, and figure out what was contaminated there.
Yeah, but also too, like how are like y'all reaching out to the residents that are in close proximity to the site so they can know all of this stuff going on. And most importantly, there's like a youth residents living nearby, Youth Spirit Arts. And I was wondering if y'all are like reaching out to them as well because they're like right behind the site.
Okay, let's talk about the first one, Dylan. You can address that. I can address the second.
Yeah. So Angela, you can't remediate if there's ongoing releases. And this is a problem. And I have been pounding on doors about this to get releases stopped. That's the first thing you have to do is get releases stopped. And the other thing, and evaluate so we had something called a site characterization report that was submitted to us, I believe in September or in October, actually, after Auto Plus Towing had occupied the site, and it was prepared by Prologis's previous consultant that provided a big report about characterization of subsurface impacts from the ABNI foundry. And it was after we put in all those monitoring wells. There was a lot of work that was done, collection of samples. That data is now suspect. That data is a baseline for what was occurring before. That report was submitted to us after Auto Plus Towing had occupied the site, and the report stated that it was still a vacant lot. So there's a lot of things here that don't jive. and they haven't jived. And so the first thing we have to do is get these releases stopped. And this has been a long, hard process, and it shouldn't be this long and hard, but it has. But I am committed to continuing to get these releases stopped, and then do additional characterization. So this whole thing about evaluating the impacts to this well, right, which is pretty egregious, having this well like that. The stormwater impacts. I should know more quickly what kind of contamination is in those stormwater pits, because that stuff then has the ability to go to subsurface, right? It also has the ability to be airborne. So you cannot remediate. You can't remediate till you know what you're remediating. So we have a lot of data that's going to need to be collected, but you can collect some of the data while you're trying to stop stuff and understand what the potential chemicals are that you're dealing with now, but you cannot remediate the site until you know that. So it's a good question. And, what environmental health has been doing since we were notified of this is trying to get these releases at this site stopped. I have been to the site many times, it aggravated my lungs and it aggravated my eyes. I will tell you that. That is a true statement. And these complaints, these concerns that you guys are bringing up need to be heard by everybody on this call. And we need to figure out a way to be effective at, not just saying we're just going to fix it and change the game. We're not changing the deed restriction. The deed restriction says you cannot release chemicals to the site. The voluntary remedial action agreement for the cleanup related to the ABNI foundry and the foundry impacts and getting facility closure says you cannot release chemicals to this site. So this is an ongoing problem, and your voices need to be heard. I've said this every community meeting I've ever been in. I need everybody in the community to talk out loud because I can't do this alone.
Okay. All right. And then just the other part of the question, the youth spirit arts. No, we have not reached out to them. We had a community engagement plan around the actual investigation and cleanup. The tow yard came in, and we've been working on getting everybody to coordinate on that. And I think we need to figure out a better community outreach plan for the entirety of the project, given community interest. So more to come on that. Would appreciate any thoughts. You folks have my email and my phone number. Any thoughts, all are considered, please call me. I'm going to move us on, and it's 7:22. So I am going to propose that we stay here till 8 and answer the remaining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people's question. If that is a problem, can you raise your hand? I think everyone is committed to doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. If you have to drop off, we are videotaping this meeting, and we will send the link out to everybody. We'll also be sending, if we need to send it.
So hit reactions.
Oh.
And raise your hand.
If we need to send it in Spanish, we will have the.
Are you on your phone?
Yeah, no.
We'll have this translated, and we will also be sending out the presentation in Spanish as well. Okay, so I have Jason J.M. Ross, Esquire.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Good evening. Thank you
Good
so much.
evening.
One of my questions is related to understanding whether or not APT was notified of all of these issues prior to. One of the biggest things that I keep hearing is harm. So I want to be sensitive to the harm that this site has seemed to have a history of, but it also seems by the proactiveness of APT and that they're providing a service to the entire city, not just in this localized area. And it seems that whatever they've been asked to do, that they have been working to be in compliance. And it seems like they're operating more in a try to do for the community than trying to harm the community. So, I understand the impact that many of this prior environmental concerns have had on the community, and that has to be addressed. And it seems like they are trying to be partners in this as opposed to bringing additional harm. I heard from the presentation that there are other sites that they're trying to move.
Oh, somebody needs to mute, I think. Forgive me for that. Keep going, please.
Sounds like
Mr. Ross.
there's others that they've identified to help remediate this issue. And so it sounds like I want to hear more how the community is working with them,
Okay.
and not necessarily, it seemed like they're almost being seen as the bad guy. I even heard someone say that they did apply for a permit and then that permit was rescinded. Was that their fault? But it just seemed like they're trying to be in line so that they're not continuing to have harm to the community, but to be an asset and a help to the community.
Okay. So thank you, first of all. And Dylan, is that you?
I mean, I will, I'll just say what I believe is that Maria Morales has been a straight shooter with me since I met her. And I'm not an easy person to answer to. This has infuriated me as much as it has infuriated CB&E. And I stake my reputation of the
You
chief
still
of
there?
environmental health protection, land
I
and
mean,
water protection division, that we stand up for environmental justice communities. And I come to CB&E and I tell them we stand up for environmental justice communities. And I spend a lot of time trying to not just make this a policy term, but walk the walk. And so when I heard this, I'm pretty horrified by what has happened here. But I will say, Maria, she's met me straight on. And she has never, does that mean this is all good? No. But that woman has met me straight on and has been honest and upfront and has done work to bring this into compliance. Now, I'm not whitewashing this at all. I'm just saying she has been a partner in helping resolve this. And I think it is a giant issue. And it is an issue that involves many, many, many agencies. And it's an issue that impacts East Oakland. And so I think, it is not, there is not blame on one person. There is a failure here. There's a big failure from many angles. And we need to right that failure. And we need to walk the talk of environmental justice. And that means we do something about it. And I'm hearing a lot of people, which is what I expected, saying this is not acceptable. And I think as agencies, we need to try to figure out what we're going to do about that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move us on to Ruby. Ruby, you can unmute yourself, I believe. And then after Ruby, we have, I hoping I'm saying this right, DL Mims. So go ahead, Ruby.
Hi, I'm Ruby Asad. I'm a senior staff attorney with Communities for a Better Environment, and I would be remiss not to say it's CBE, not CB and E. So I want to make one just comment, and then I want to ask my question. So prior to September 2024, Oakland and Oakland PD operated without this site. And now I'm watching you all talk as if they are just so essential that you all have to bend over backwards to help a toxic industry stay in this community and continue profiting off the backs of our East Oakland residents. I was a D7 resident for many years. I lived on 88th and Birch. I love East Oakland, and it makes me sick to watch you all talk about this industry as if it is serving a community that is already overburdened. The California Environmental Quality
It
Act
has three little dots with
exists.
mute and then three little.
The California Environmental Quality Act exists for this very reason. You all put this industry in this community without conducting the appropriate environmental review to ensure that the community, YSA, my neighbors that are still living in East Oakland, that they know exactly what the harm that they are being exposed to on a day-to-day basis. Nobody knows at this point. For all we know, this site is killing people. And we won't know because no studies have been conducted. Nothing's been released to the public. And you all are aware of it, and you're helping it continue without any of this information. What is the California Environmental Quality Act process that will be followed with regards to this site? That's my question.
And I believe that's going to be Prologis that answers it, because for the longer term property redevelopment, it's the the preparation of an environmental impact report under the California Environmental Quality Act. But I think that we have Janet Galvez from Prologis. If you could unmute yourself, Janet, and answer Ruby's question, which is what is the environmental process that will be followed for this site?
As it relates to the new redevelopment. So as it
No. Okay, I'm sorry. What is
As it relates to the tow yard, that's a use that's subject to the Environmental Quality Act.
right? So, and I believe, correct me if I'm mistaken, Janet, that the tow yard use will be studied as part of the EIR if it continues to be
All right, so
there.
Pete Volman here from City of Oakland. Basically, the EIR that we have ongoing at this point is for the redevelopment. The idea is that the hazmat section is going to acknowledge this use because it occurred after the NOP. Typically, the baseline is when the NOP is issued, but we're saying because this occurred after that, we still want this to be characterized in that EIR. So that EIR process is not to entitle this tow lot, or at least it hasn't been changed up yet. At this point in time, we do not have an application filed with the city for consideration. So we can't even respond to that process yet until we get that application and even have a chance to even consider it.
Okay. I have next up Deal Mims. Deal, you had something typed in the questions that you wanted to, I believe you wanted to read or ask out loud. Let me see if he or she is still on. Deal, are you there? Okay, I'm going to move on. Next is Adele Watts, and then we have Alex Brown, and then Maria. Finally, you're up. I keep seeing your hand up, so I want you to know that I see you. Adele?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess one part of it's a comment just to like reiterate like that the use as a tow yard is, is like a cumulative impact, right? Like we already know of the existing harm, and this is like a secondary harm, right, on top of a already contaminated site. So just I recall someone mentioning, that this is what is the harm that keeps coming up. And it's, again, it's not personal to anyone on this call. I think this is the issue with systems and the way that, like, there's not a lack of communication between agencies that allows for something like this to happen. And so I think my original question still stands and I feel like I'm just not hearing an answer. And I appreciate Dylan for taking it on, but honestly, I would really want someone from the city of Oakland to address the question of how are they allowed to operate without the proper permit. Like that is something I would want someone from the city of Oakland to answer. So that's one piece. And then the other piece is, thinking ahead. From my understanding, the Auto Plus towing lease ends in 2029. And so when these wrecked cars are eventually removed, I want to hear what guarantee that the East Oakland neighbors and neighborhoods will be included in the cleanup. So that's one question. And then also just another question about stormwater systems. Understanding that the stormwater systems need to be updated. What is the current risk to community? Also want to name that there's a creek, right? Elmhurst Creek, that runs directly along the side of the property. And so with all of these pieces that are also still outstanding, how is the creek impacted, and how does that impact the community? So those are my
Okay.
questions.
Okay, so the first question I have here is how is this allowed to operate without the proper permit? And Pete, are you still on to provide clarity on that?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, they're not allowed to operate. We gave them rescission letter saying that they're not allowed to operate. It becomes a code compliance issue. You know, these things can take a long time. I mean, it needs to be reactivated because it was closed. There would need to be enforcement actions, cease and desist letters. I think at this point in time, you know, this is a city contractor doing a service for the city. I think what it's looking at is like, let's deal with the immediate issue of the hazardous materials release. And sorry, and I'm speaking outside of my role in this really, but just kind of giving an overview, trying to explain. And, you know, and basically they're trying to make a decision if they want to proceed with a conditional use permit. There's going to be a number of improvements that need to occur on the site. So that's a decision they need to make if they want to pursue that or if they want to pick up and leave and look to do this elsewhere. You know, this ultimately would be a decision as part of that conditional use permit for the planning commission to decide. So that would be a process in taking that forward once an application is submitted. So at this point in time, no application has been submitted. And I see Joe DeFree from City Administrator's Office also has his hand up and
Right.
probably wants to follow up.
And I want to say Joe's staying late. He had an engagement and he's still here. So thank you.
Well, I do. Thank you, Tracy. I have to get downstairs to the community advisory board because I'm supposed to present at 7, but I had to move their agenda around. Pete's right. You know, when this came to our attention, you know, from the city, you've got 4 departments represented here tonight. You've got the planning, OPD, city administrator, as well as the Department of Transportation, because both Department of Transportation and OPD rely heavily on APT to meet that basic function. And I will say that the problem of abandoned vehicles in neighborhoods disproportionately impacts East Oakland. I've seen the numbers. Our OCDOT managers on as well. I don't know if he wants to speak, but when you look at the thousands and thousands of abandoned and burned out vehicles across the city, council districts 6 and 7 bear the brunt of all of them. That is where the majority are, and that's where the majority of the deployment goes. So on the one hand, we've got these vehicles in neighborhoods causing hazards that are impacting children in neighborhoods. So we do need to get them off the street, and APD provides that service. Now, where they store them can't also cause an environmental harm. And so we're at this point when this came to us of determining what is the right path. And frankly, from the city administrator's perspective, we really did want to hear from everyone at this meeting today to really get a sense of where the community was on this, because the options are limited. We are happy that there are environmental mitigations taking place right now. We're very happy that the county has really pushed to see that Prologis and APT take those steps. But we have not concluded that APT remaining at this site for 5 years is the right thing to do. We've definitely not reached that conclusion. We wanted to hear what the community had to say. We wanted to see the depth of the environmental mitigation problems. And we've also asked APT to explore other options to see, are there facilities, we're even willing to modify their contract that requires them to store vehicles in Oakland. If they can find a place outside of Oakland that would be more suitable, we're willing to modify their contract because they have been a good contractor. In other words, they have served the city well in their contract, and we can't have this function stop. So I think as far as the timing and the speed with which a decision has been made or hasn't been made is in part because of that, because it is an essential service. That said, the path to compliance for this property to allow for a tow yard is very narrow. They can apply for a conditional use permit. That is a lengthy process, and there's no guarantee that they will get that permit. The city, the policy side would be disinclined to support a conditional use permit because that type of permit runs permanently with the land. That's the nature of conditional use permits. The only other option is really, based on a clause that allows an essential service to happen. I'm not convinced that we should move in that direction, and I've indicated that to Prologis and to APT. So this meeting tonight is very important. I stayed longer to hear the community concerns before I go down to my other board meeting. But I just really want to appreciate and thank CBE and everyone that's come forward to raise their concerns, because we're trying to navigate this with you. And this has been really helpful to hear from all of you.
So just fair to say that you'll take it under consideration that you've heard that this is not an appropriate land use, and you'll get back to folks on that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And Adele, I just want to say there's a fellow that really wants to give comment, and he's on a time restriction. So I'm going to hold your next question, let him talk, and then get back to the question about stormwater and will you be involved in the longer term cleanup. So that person is Alex Brown, who's been incredibly patient. Alex, are you still here?
Good
There
evening.
you are. Thank you. And I apologize for the long wait.
No problem. No problem at all. My initial concern here, and I have to admit, I was not able to see the slide presentation during this whole process. So the pictures and whatnot were not evident. I could only base on my comments on what I heard. But it seems to me that the issue here seems to be, how did Auto Plus Towing be allowed to operate on the old site that was the ABNI pipe foundry? Now, I'm familiar with ABNI. They fabricated cast iron pipe for years on that site, and they had in place their remediation system for stormwater and whatnot, surface runoff and whatnot. But from the comments that were made, it sounds like during the demolition and removal, or when ABNI left the site, they also demoed the treatment system for the stormwater and everything that's going on and going out into the bay. Now, I'm assuming that those pits or pictures that showed the pits, are those open pits or are they enclosed tanks? It's unclear. But if they're open pits, then you're going to have an air pollution issue as well as the drainage, stormwater drainage issue of polluted water. And if it's just stored there on site and open, that's a problem. But you got to start asking yourself, well, wait a minute, how did Auto Plus Towing come to get access to use the site for the tow yard? And granted, and when did that happen? I mean, how long have they actually been on the site?
Right. Dylan, can you address those? And then I'd also throw Adele's question in there, that with stormwater, what is the risk to the
My
Elm
question.
Creek, Elmhurst Creek?
Yep. So, Alex, I appreciate your questions. It is my understanding, and I can only tell you what I have tried to glean from this nightmare, is that Prologis leased this site to APT. I don't know when the negotiations started. We were not privy to it. We were working with Prologis on site investigation and facility closure and cleanup, not on reuse with hazardous materials. So it was, and it is my understanding that that lease was executed in July of 2024. When they started having a discussion about this was sooner than that, and it was never brought to anybody's attention in multiple meetings, in meetings with the community, in meetings with environmental health. There was no disclosure that this was going to happen. So that's how it happened. It was leased by Prologis to Auto Plus Towing.
Okay, well, see, that there's the problem, because you gotta realize that the ABNI foundry was a hazardous pollution site already. Okay,
it still is.
And it's well, see, this is the thing. There's not anything that the tow yard is really contributing to, especially over the last year or two, other than any runoff from the vehicles that are stored on site. So you've got some surface drainage issues and you have some subsurface drainage issues, but there's no treatment on site for it because it was removed by ABNI when they demoed.
No, it was not. It was not removed by AB&I. It was removed by Prologis.
Oh, okay.
Prologis
When
did the
the site
vertical
was
demolition.
demolished.
I'm
And
just referencing the site, the demolition process.
Yeah,
not
but
the person.
it's a good question, and
Yeah,
they are really serious comments. If you
yeah,
demo the
so-
site and you
but-
demo the stormwater and then you lease it to a towing facility that
Yeah.
has uncontrolled stormwater,
Yeah,
that's an issue.
that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it's
Nope.
pretty clear. So, but the bigger concern here is when it was leased to APT, there should have been a process in place by the city of Oakland, okay, to institute the requirements for its use.
I believe, Alex, that it was, I believe that a lease was executed between Prologis and APT without the city's notification or without environmental health notification.
Okay, yeah, because in order for that to happen, there would have had to be a stormwater pollution prevention plan put in place that would have had to take care of these issues, because you have to provide some form of stormwater remediation and treatment on site.
And this is still an open Coupa facility. It has not closed because the contamination and the hardscape removal and the contamination from former AB&I foundry has not been resolved yet. So it's not good. It's not good.
See that. Well,
Dylan, I'm going to move us along just a bit because we only have 15 more minutes, and I just want to make sure this one question gets answered, and that is, what is happening right now with Elmhurst Creek? Adele really wanted to, or I think it was Adele, really wanted to know that. Thank you.
Yep.
And so that's part of this, is that you have the stormwater. So what is happening with the creek? Do you
So,
know?
I don't know, Adele. I have asked for the liquid to be pumped. I've asked for the liquid to be removed. I've asked for a plan for them to not allow collection of that stuff anymore. I've asked for the liquid to be characterized. And once we get some information there, I suspect they will be investigating Elmhurst Creek, like happened in the 1990s when AB&I was releasing stuff to the stormwater, and the regional board put a cleanup and abatement order on it. So, we're waiting to see the results of this. And I expect to see that soon. And the plan, I think, is on the 4th, which is in 2 days, that comes about getting out there immediately. And this is what I've heard, is to suck that liquid out in a vac, sample it, suck it out in a vac truck, get it off site, but get it sampled first so that we understand the pollutants that we're going to be looking at in stormwater. Because right now, I showed you some pictures of stormwater pits that had some straw wattles and stuff around, but it's not containing stormwater. It continues to move over, it continues to move out, it continues to pond, and I quite frankly don't know how it's discharging off this site.
Okay. All right. So more to come on that. And then I'm going to call on Mr. Brown. Go one more time to whatever you need to say it. And then I'm going to move us on to Mariana.
I heard her comment, but it sounds like you don't know whether that is actual waste from AB&I or runoff from ATP.
No, I am not concerned about the stormwater. There are some things to resolve with AB&I. We have a pretty good characterization from AB&I before Auto Plus towing came on, and there was still things to resolve. But I mean, that's true, Alex. You can't completely separate it. But what I am most concerned about are all those chemicals I showed you that come from destroyed vehicles that are absolutely in contact with stormwater at this site.
Okay, I get that, and that's a fair assessment, but you have no idea what that quantity is.
I don't. You're right.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Even from the runoff, like you were talking about, the fire retardant and all that kind of stuff, that could be a very, very small quantity because you don't have any data.
No, I have no data, and so
we can throw out all of these different chemicals. But there's no basis for what that actually is.
I have a basis for every chemical that is known.
No. I mean, in the runoff is what I'm saying, because you have no measurements of it.
That's what I'm asking for. Is first of all, I don't know what you want me to say here, Alex. I'm doing what I can.
Well,
I'm asking them.
No. I don't want you to say anything. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
So comment received, Dylan, and why don't you answer it, and then I'm going to move us on because I do need to.
Yeah, I have some questions. I got concerns, and I have statements. This is Ken Houston right here. I'm out
And
here at the
wait,
site.
I know that, but I just want to make sure Dylan asked that. There's a community member that has been had her hand up for an
Oh
hour
yeah,
and I want to
take
get
care
to
of it.
her.
Yes,
And then I
please.
would very much like to close us down and I'll give you an opportunity to speak. And I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that, um, Dylan, do you want to answer that? I think you've asked and answered, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
acknowledge, Alex, absolutely your concerns. I have the concerns. I've had these concerns from the day I walked onto this site and saw it uncontrolled. I am waiting for Prologis to give me data so that then I can conduct and make a risk assessment about getting into the creek. And they also have to show us where stormwater is going. They need to modify that stormwater system so that doesn't continue to happen. So I expect to see something very soon, and that data will be public. But I expect to see quite a bit in that stormwater.
Thank you. Okay, and then Mariana? I know you're still there.
Sí, aquí estoy.
Okay.
¿Sí voy a tener interpretación? Ajá.
Sí.
Ok. Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Marina Muñoz. Soy una miembro de hace muchos años de CBE y también soy una residente de East Oakland, ¿verdad? Represento a un comité asesor de aquí, de la comunidad, y también estoy relacionada con el RAR, Residentes en Acción Comunitaria, y tengo ya más de 20 años aquí viviendo, ¿verdad? He estado escuchando todas estas cosas y estoy molesta, ¿sí? Porque yo he trabajado en proyectos sobre el medio ambiente, sí, y he descubierto, pues, que está contaminado hasta con el 2.pm nuestra comunidad. Sé que yo hice el estudio de esta fábrica, ¿verdad? De la que están mencionando. Encontramos muchos químicos ahí cuando hicimos estos estudios, ¿sí? Ahora no sé qué está pasando. Este lugar está muy contaminado, ¿sí? Todavía no se ha limpiado correctamente como debe de ser. Y nos están trayendo más contaminación a nuestro espacio. Sí, a nuestro East Oakland, donde yo estoy enferma de alergia y mis hijas de asma. ¿Quién nos va a curar nuestro daño? ¿Verdad? La compañía ya se fue, ya enfermó a la gente, a los niños con muchas asmas que están ahí junto a la escuela. ¿Sí? Y ahora, ¿quién nos va a cuidar? ¿Quién nos va a curar? ¿Quién nos va a pagar para que esa medicina que estamos tomando? Sí, yo sé que el condado y la ciudad lo que quieren es dinero, ¿sí? ¿Acaso salieron a hacer alcance para que la comunidad se diera cuenta de lo que están poniendo otra vez, esa contaminación que se está contaminada, que nos está haciendo daño a nuestra salud? Y ahora, ¿cómo vamos a garantizar que esos pozos, esos químicos que todavía existen ahí, que no se estén yendo, ¿verdad? A nuestros arroyos, a nuestro mar, ¿sí? ¿Cómo van a asegurar ellos? Estoy oyendo que van a mandar pruebas a los laboratorios. Está bien, mándenlas, mándenlas. Necesitamos nosotros como comunidad que nos den detalladamente todos esos químicos que están en la actualidad y qué es lo que van a hacer, ¿sí? Porque nosotros la comunidad tenemos el derecho, ¿sí? De saber qué se está poniendo en nuestra comunidad. ¿Por qué no ponemos, verdad? Cosas buenas para nuestros jóvenes, para la comunidad, ¿verdad? Tiendas,
Okay.
frutas y verduras orgánicas,
Okay.
algo que sea sano, que no esté contaminado. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just wondering, was everybody able to hear that in English?
No.
You were not. I did not think so. So I'm going to recap and then we'll send out her comments to everybody as well. But she said she's a longtime East Oakland resident. The foundry had many chemicals that it was a highly contaminated site, and she doesn't think it's fair or right to bring more contamination to our space. She has allergies. Both of her daughters have asthma. The company is gone. Who will take care of this issue? The county and the city want money, but they need to take care of this issue. What outreach was done to the community? What are we being exposed to? What are all of the chemicals? And why isn't our health important? So I don't think we're prepared to answer the entirety of that tonight. And I do think, as we started at the beginning of the meeting, that I wanted to say we would not have a lot of answers tonight, that we're in the process of doing this. So I really think that as a group, the various 30 parties that are involved very much need to go back and discuss everything we heard and then come back and report to the community. I think that's probably the best option. I put my phone number out there and I would like to hear how if people agree with that, what needs to happen here. We did hear you loud and clear. People would like to see this facility, the APT not operating there. That's not a decision that Dylan can make. I think it's a decision that needs to be made as a group. So I am going to let Supervisor Miley, because he's looking at me, address his constituents, then the council member, and then finally, Dylan, I think you wanted to have some closing comments. And I want to just thank everybody for being so gracious tonight and giving us such great comments and doing it in such a respectful fashion. It's quite humbling. So, Supervisor Miley?
Yeah, well, thank you. And thanks for facilitating a great meeting, Tracy. I found this to be very, very, very informative. Environmental health has briefed me as well as my staff. But having this meeting has brought things into a better context for me, as well as provided additional information that I wasn't aware of. The bottom line I would just say is I do appreciate Joe DeFries responding the way he did. And so I'll be eagerly awaiting a follow-up meeting and appreciate Dylan for her due diligence on this matter through environmental health. And that's about all I need to say at the moment, but I did find this to be very informative.
Well, I appreciate you attending. I know you've got lots on your plate these days. And then Councilmember Houston?
Yes, I have many comments, concerns, and statements, and some of them were answered. And I keep hearing this about how did they were able to operate. Who and how was that permit given from the very beginning? How did that permit? Because they got a permit from the very beginning. Who and how did that happen? Right. That was just one of my questions because I kept hearing everyone saying, how are they able to operate? How did that happen? In Elmhurst Creek, how is that currently? How are they currently stopping the discharge, or and is it runoff of the property going to the streets? I mean, I have many, many concerns about the pollutants that's over. I heard Mr. Charles say something about fire suppressants. All these chemicals that were on the streets are now in one area. But I did hear them say that they're not bringing any more vehicles that are burnt and that are leaking at this site. Was that correct? And when did that stop?
Right. So I think, and I'll just answer this and somebody correct me if I'm wrong because these questions were answered, I believe. So the first question, how did this happen? I think that what Dylan had said was that Prologis and APT came to an agreement and the city and the county were not involved in that, if I'm not mistaken. And the second question was about what's going into Elmhurst Creek. And the answer there was at this point, that's within Dylan Rowe's purview, and she does not know and is awaiting some information from Prologis. She's given them direction to figure that out. Um, and I think what we really need to do here is probably regroup and have another community meeting when we discuss all of the comments that we've received. I'm going to get a transcript of this and write down all of the questions and then work with the team to answer those and get those back out to the community. It might take us a little time, but we'll do it and I'll make sure people know. And I guess I would just ask you right now, Councilmember Houston, because we're going to end in a couple minutes, just to anything you want to say to address your constituents, and then Dylan is going to close us out.
Yes, what I'd like to
Not to
say to
be
my
dismissive of what you're saying. I just want to make sure that people get to have some dinner and go to bed on
Right.
time.
And I have a community meeting, and this is so important. I had
Okay.
sent my staff to the community meeting. My constituents is like she said, District 7 has been underserved for years and years and years. Um, I wanted to know if the contaminated or the cars that's been leaking stopped and when they stopped. I'm gonna get all the information, and should have another community meeting to get all this information from Dylan Tracy and Prologis, because the answer wasn't it wasn't answered. They received a permit to operate. How did they get this permit from Oakland? I think it was ceased after, or it was pulled, but they did get a permit. So I want to
Right.
find out, how did that permit happen and who gave that permit to them to start this operation?
Well, and I
Okay.
think it's important to note that actually the permit that was issued erroneously and rescinded happened in November after the lease had been executed with PT by Prologis, after environmental health had issued notice to comply for hazardous releases at the site. That permit that the city of Oakland was, and Pete, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was in November. So it's not the city of Oakland did not permit this. This operation started operating with under Prologis's lease. They were the sole responsibility for leasing this land and allowing this to take place without notification of anybody.
Yeah, I just want to follow up a little bit more for Councilmember Houston. So what a zoning clearance is basically says, is this use permitted in this zone or not? And that was an error on staff. So this was after they were operating. There was already an enforcement case opened. They reach out to somebody at the counter. There was a recent change in the planning code, so I don't know that that planner is no longer with the city. So I don't know if it was that they we're looking at an older version of the code, or if they just missed the limitation. It says permitted, but there's a limitation. So I don't know if they just missed that. They didn't read the limitation, seeing that, oh, it can't be within 600 feet of a residential zone or with half a mile of BART. Maybe they checked the residential zone distance, but not the BART distance. I don't know, but the zoning clearance was granted. Once I was aware that this had happened, I reached out to the operations staff and they immediately rescinded it. So that's
Okay.
where,
Okay.
So that's what happened. Okay, now I understand that
but
part.
then
That's how
just,
it
yeah,
started.
but just to be clear, like a zoning clearance doesn't mean like you're good to go, you can go operate. It's similar, like if somebody says, oh, I want to open a restaurant, we say zoning clearance, yes, a restaurant is permitted here. It doesn't mean you don't need to go to the county health department to get your health permit. Doesn't mean you don't need to go get your permits with the building department for your kitchen. You know, there's still all these other things that still need to take place.
So they
Okay.
broke
Got
their lease.
got it. Got
Okay.
it. But
They
my
broke
last
their
question
lease.
is very important. This is very important. They stopped bringing those type of vehicles except when did they stop bringing these vehicles? So they're not bringing them here at this site any longer,
Maria,
correct?
can you confirm that you're not bringing any more burned vehicles to the site or heavily damaged?
That is correct, although there are still some there that need to be relocated.
Okay. So they've
And we're
relocated some
working
of the
on
burned
that.
vehicles, not bringing any of the burned vehicles or heavily damaged ones to the site anymore.
Okay,
So
got it.
I thank
Okay.
you for attending. Did you want to say anything else to your constituents, or can
That's
I
it.
hand this over to Dylan?
We're going to pass it to Dylan. We're going to get to the bottom of it. We should have another community meeting because this is
Okay.
the second one. We need another community meeting.
That we will do that, and we'll make sure that first we get all of the questions
Thank you.
collated and answered. Dylan, would you like to say
Yeah,
something at the end?
I just want to say to the community, ask your hard questions. Ask your hard questions. Keep asking your hard questions. We are government entities. We all need to, and not only government, this is Prologis. Prologis has a big role in this. Ask your hard questions. I will listen to you. I will do everything I can to bring stakeholders to the table. I think that's evident by this. And this is uncomfortable. This is absolutely uncomfortable for everybody on this call that has to listen to these things that you're saying, and not one of us can actually, we don't have a good answer. There's not a good answer. There is not. And so we will continue to talk about this. We will continue to talk about this site. We will continue to talk about other sites in East Oakland and other environmental justice communities. Adele and your whole group, sorry for calling you the wrong name, put an and in it. I appreciate you a lot. You are a smart group. You have held my feet to the fire every time I have met with you. And if I don't know an answer, I tell you the truth and I tell you I will find it and I will work with you. And so keep asking your questions.
Great. Okay, so I'd like to just say two things. One, if you would put your email or a way to contact you in the question and answer box, we'd like to send the questions once we get them together and follow up on the next community meeting. So if you're interested in doing that, please give us your email. We will not share it with anybody. We'll also make sure that CBE has it so that they can send it out to all of the folks that they serve. I also want to thank everybody. I'm going to remain on because there's some people that didn't maybe get their questions answered. So the meeting is over, but I'm going to remain on till 8:15. And if you have a question that wasn't answered, or you need to tell me something and you want to talk with somebody on the team, I'm happy to remain on and get you in touch with that person. So the meeting is over, but I'll stay on for another 10 or 15 minutes with John to make sure that anybody that didn't feel heard or has a need for more information or wants to talk with Dylan or the supervisor or whomever, that I capture that information, we can follow up. Okay. And I just want to say thank you very much, everybody, for being so courteous for a very difficult conversation. Much appreciated.